Setting aside the soldier at any time, when Uchiha Madara walked out from the corner, he had already transformed into the appearance of that soldier. He walked towards the place the soldier pointed to, encountering inspections along the way, and even guards blocking his path. However, under the effects of transformation technique, genjutsu, and other ninja techniques, they had no effect. At the same time, he kept asking for directions, constantly changing his identity and using ninjutsu from time to conceal his presence. Finally, he found his target. The Celestial Dragons are the descendants of the 20 kings who established the world government 800 years ago, considering themselves as descendants of the creators. Due to their self-perceived nobility, they disdain breathing the same air as ordinary people and wear bubble-like headgear. They treat people of other races as slaves, not considering them as human beings. Among the Celestial Dragons, Henrietta Saint is one who particularly enjoys having slaves. In his prison, there are more than 900 slaves. It should be noted that this is the result of accumulating slaves almost from scratch after Tiger freed all the slaves about 3 to 5 years ago. In other words, almost every day or two, a slave is bought. When Celestial Dragons purchase slaves, except for a few Celestial Dragons, most of them will not have any relationship with female slaves. They believe that having a relationship with female slaves would taint their bloodline. They purchase slaves mainly for using them as dogs, for transportation, and for showing off their difference from the lower class people. However, Henrietta Saint is a bit different. He purchases slaves not for showing off, but... Are the slaves ready for today? Henrietta Saint's face was full of fat, revealing an excited smile. They have been prepared for you a long time ago. The butler beside him bowed. Good, then let's begin, Henrietta Saint said without hesitation. Yes. Soon, 2 people were brought out and thrown into the central square. The butler introduced, today's 2 slaves, one is a pirate captain who has eaten the devil fruit, and the other is a strong fishman. It should bring you some amusement today. Then why don't we start right away? Let them get to work quickly. Henrietta Saint eagerly grabbed the railing in front of him. Gladiatorial combat. This is his interest in collecting slaves. Sometimes, in order to find some amusement, he would even specifically purchase devil fruits for the slaves to eat. Let them begin. The butler ordered the people beside him. Yes, in fact, they didn't need to be ordered. The 2 slaves glanced at each other and spontaneously started fighting. Delaying is useless. If they both delay, Henrietta Saint would order them to be killed together. Even if their fighting spirit is slightly lacking, they would be discarded. Bang, bang, bang. The 2 immediately started fighting, and there were already guards guarding in front of Henrietta Saint. As for Henrietta Saint himself, he watched the scene of fists hitting flesh and blood flowing, his face showing a drunken flush. That's right. Fight. Keep fighting for me. Bite him to death for me. The 2 duelists chosen were indeed worthy. Their strength was evenly matched. It was a bloody battle. In the end, the fishman slave killed the captain's slave at the cost of severe injuries. However, Henrietta Saint was still very dissatisfied and said, I clearly told you to bite him to death. Why didn't you do it? Bang. Before the fishman could say anything, Henrietta Saint simply raised a pistol and shot the fishman dead. Plop. The body fell to the ground, but the people around were unfazed. The butler waved his hand and had the servants take away the 2 bodies. This is just a daily occurrence. Henrietta Saint was not satisfied and was about to order the capture of 2 new slaves when suddenly... Henrietta Saint? Right? A cold voice with a hint of chill sounded. Who called me? Henrietta Saint turned his head and saw a figure with crimson eyes. Who are you? What are the guards doing? The butler's face changed and he stood in front of Henrietta Saint. From this person in front of him, he felt a bone-chilling coldness. Suddenly, he froze, and the crimson figure was already standing in front of him. A hidden blade slashed, cutting a gash in his neck, blood trickling down. Zhao Shu didn't even want to talk to these trash. Although he had long known that celestial dragons were absurd, he didn't expect reality to be even more absurd than he imagined. He's the enemy. He killed Butler Olin. The surrounding guards trembled, their faces filled with fear. Butler Olin was the strongest among them, yet he died so easily at the hands of the intruder? However, they gritted their teeth and charged forward. It wasn't that they liked protecting the scum in the middle, but if they didn't protect him well, not only themselves, but even their loved ones and friends would suffer. Perhaps the invaders feared the retaliation of the celestial dragons, but even if it was just offending Henrietta Saint, they... However, when Henrietta Saint saw the butler's death, instead of feeling sad, his eyes lit up as he looked at Zhao Shu. Good, you're so strong. Decided, you will be my slave. Henrietta Saint grinned and revealed a smile. I'll let you fight with my slaves, it'll definitely be fun. He knew that the person in front of him was very strong, but so what? Rarely did someone dare to harm the celestial dragons? Upon hearing this, Zhao Shu was momentarily stunned, then he immediately smiled indifferently. Idiot, truly beyond help. Mariajoy Defense Department. Oh no. A soldier ran over with a serious expression on his face. The officer was taken aback, looking at the soldier. What's wrong? The soldier gritted his teeth and said, we found a corpse of one of our patrol soldiers in a place where the Den Mushi surveillance couldn't see. The officer frowned. Isn't it normal to have a corpse? There are always some young and energetic guards who can't tolerate the behavior of the celestial dragons and seek their own death. They are often killed on the spot by the celestial dragons and then discarded. This has become a common occurrence, but... The soldier swallowed and said, but we saw from the recording that the killed soldier walked towards the courtyard of Henrietta Saint. What? The officer was stunned, his face changed drastically. Quick! Inform the naval headquarters. Soon, the whole Mariajoy was in action. Although they were decadent, they were not fools. A person who can transform their appearance and rush towards the celestial dragons poses a considerable danger, no matter what their purpose is. If it's someone from the Revolutionary Army. Admiral Akainu quickly rushed over, his face grim. In fact, he didn't want to deal with the celestial dragon's nonsense at all, but unfortunately, Mariajoy and the naval headquarters were quite close, leaving him no chance to refuse. Not only Akainu, but when Akainu arrived, an elite team had already assembled and rushed towards the courtyard of Henrietta Saint with him. The celestial dragons have been despised by people for a long time. If the security is too lax, there probably wouldn't be many celestial dragons left now. In fact, when Akainu arrived, a group of guards had already surrounded the gate of Henrietta Saint's courtyard. There is no one passing through here. His Highness Henrietta is playing gladiatorial combat. If we disturb His Highness's interest, can you bear the consequences? Several gatekeepers gritted their teeth and intercepted the crowd outside the gate. The guards looked at each other but couldn't forcefully break in. The capriciousness of the celestial dragons might lead to the gatekeepers being killed along with themselves. Even though they came for the safety of the celestial dragons. That's enough. Akainu finally arrived and stood in front of the gatekeepers, opened the gate. He looked displeased, but he didn't hold any grudges against these people. They were all forced by the celestial dragons. But seeing the Marine Admiral arrive, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Although the celestial dragons were capricious, the Marine Admiral still had the authority to disturb them. Even the 5 elders wouldn't punish Akainu for such a trivial matter. Yes. The gatekeepers immediately breathed a sigh of relief and opened the gate. Akainu walked in with big strides, but as soon as he entered, his expression changed. Silent. Too silent. The celestial dragons were not quiet individuals, and according to the gatekeepers, Henrietta should be engaged in gladiatorial combat. Is that something quiet? Akainu absolutely didn't believe it. His face turned ugly, and he took a few quick steps. As expected, he saw the body lying on the ground, one person wearing a bubble on his head, dressed in luxurious clothes, obviously Henrietta Saint. At the same time, there was another person. Uchiha Madara. Akainu's eyes flashed with anger. Oh, Akainu. Uchiha Madara walked out from the back passage with big steps, a smile on his face. What are you doing here? Akainu's heat began to rise, ready to attack. Oh, it's like this, my friend. Uchiha Madara said, stepping on the bubble on Henrietta Saint's head, and said, I suddenly got a disease called brain damage, so. Akainu squinted his eyes and asked, so what? Uchiha Madara chuckled lightly and said, so I cured him. Akainu's anger grew even stronger. How did you cure him? I cut off his head. Uchiha Madara said casually, no matter who it is, once their head is cut off, they won't be brain damaged anymore. As he spoke, he casually kicked the head of the person on the ground to the side. Henrietta Saint's face was filled with disbelief. He seemed completely unable to understand why the person in front of him dared to attack him, a celestial dragon. The blood of the celestial dragons is also red, no different from the killed guards. What a good method. Akainu's anger turned into a smile, and the lava on his arms suddenly erupted. Dark Hound. In an instant, the entire palace seemed to be on top of a furnace. And at the center of the scorching lava, it seemed that even the flames could be melted. The lava fist that was capable of destroying everything fiercely smashed towards Uchiha Madara. However, Uchiha Madara just smiled faintly and said, "That's right, I think so too." The next moment, boom! The scorching lava collided with the deep purple arm, causing the entire hall to tremble. Akainu took big strides forward, continuously unleashing punches of lava. Here, there was no sea level for Admiral to retreat. The Uchiha clan was not polite either. Susanoo was no longer just a skeletal arm, but a humanoid figure. Based on the skeleton, it was covered with meridians and flesh, wrapped in a cloak like chakra. As the realism increased, his eyes had long turned into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and he no longer needed to conserve his eye power like before, only using the simplest skeleton. Boom! The iron fist of lava and the fist of Susanoo collided, creating a resounding roar. Then, the scorching lava was shattered by the reinforced fist. So tough. Akainu squinted his eyes. Indeed, the transformation of that huge figure greatly enhanced this man's strength. Or perhaps, this was his true strength. However, he was completely fearless. He hadn't fully utilized the power of his devil fruit yet. Not to mention the characteristics of a Logia devil fruit. Boom, boom, boom. The two continued to clash. Relying on the elemental transformation ability of the Logia devil fruit, Akainu fearlessly withstood the attacks of Susanoo after realizing that Uchiha Madara didn't possess haki. Uchiha Madara didn't mind either. Susanoo was both offensive and defensive, and the opponent's attacks couldn't harm him. However, the reinforcements are increasing. The Crimson Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan glanced at the marine soldiers behind him. Below Mariajoy was the headquarters of the Marines, and reinforcements kept pouring in. It was even possible for the Celestial Dragons to send reinforcements. Although many Celestial Dragons were brainless, as someone who was familiar with the original work, Zhao Shu definitely wouldn't underestimate this entity that had ruled the seas for hundreds of years. Leaving aside the annoying behavior of the Celestial Dragons, they had remained unharmed under the protection of the Marines until now. It couldn't be solely because the Marine admirals of past generations and high-ranking officials of the world government were supremely loyal to the Celestial Dragons, right? He didn't know about ordinary Celestial Dragons, but the 5 elders and that mysterious IM made him wary. Well, since the job is done, it's time to retreat. A smile suddenly appeared on Uchiha Madara's face. Akainu furrowed his brows. The next second, Susanoo's iron fist fiercely struck, once again smashing Akainu into his elemental form. Then, without hesitation, Uchiha Madara took large strides and ran towards the distance. Not good, he wants to escape. Akainu quickly returned to his original form and, seeing Uchiha Madara's actions, his expression changed. There was a cliff over there, and beneath the cliff was the sea. For someone who could step on Minato, running to the edge of a cliff almost meant a successful retreat. To let a man who had infiltrated Mariajoy alone and killed celestial dragons escape unscathed? The face of the Marines? No. The face of the world government would be completely lost. Don't even think about running. Akainu was furious and threw a punch. Great eruption. The enormous lava fist erupted in a manner similar to a volcanic eruption, transforming into dozens of countless volcanic projectiles. The power of each volcanic projectile was enough to easily destroy a super-sized warship. 8-foot Chong-hook Jade. Uchiha Ban embraced his arms, and Susanoo's 2 arms turned, throwing several huge Chong-hook Jade connected by rope-like objects as if throwing shurikens. Boom! The 8-foot Chong-hook Jade collided with great eruption, creating a tremendous roar. A storm swept through, and Susanoo's body accelerated its pace. The giant strides of Susanoo may not be fast, but its enormous body can take steps hundreds of times larger than an ordinary person, enough to compensate for its seemingly slow movements. In just a few steps, it reached the edge of the cliff. However, in the next second, Susanoo suddenly leaned its body, and a beam of light hit its shoulder, almost piercing through it. How terrifying. But if we let you escape like this, it would be a disgrace to the Marines. With a strange tone and a lazy demeanor, a man wearing a Marine Admiral cloak stood not far behind Uchiha Ban. Admiral Kizaru. Why are you here too? Akainu had also arrived by now. If I didn't come, he would have escaped, Kizaru said nonchalantly. 2 Marine admirals gathered together. The Marine soldiers who arrived later showed joy on their faces. They won. They could finally win. Are there any forces stronger than these 2 Marine admirals? However, the people involved were not as relaxed as the soldiers. Be careful, the opponent is strong, Akainu said solemnly. I know. Kizaru looked at Susanoo, which couldn't be completely penetrated, a hint of seriousness flashing in his lazy eyes. However, this was as far as he could go. Even if they joined forces, they couldn't easily escape, not even against the 4 emperors. But a marine admiral, huh? Interesting, ha ha ha. Uchiha Madara suddenly burst into laughter. Then I, Uchiha Madara, will also use a little bit of strength. In the next second, his chakra suddenly erupted. Deep blue chakra soared into the sky, but Madara himself gently closed his eyes. Whether it's a marine admiral or anyone else, everything is futile. Akainu and Kizaru both had stunned expressions. The giant in front of them had turned into the size of a small mountain. At the same time, its form underwent a tremendous change. The armor grew larger, the face transformed into a tengu-like appearance, wings emerged from its back, and 2 swords were held in its hands. Like a heavenly god, just with this, complete body Susanoo. It's huge. Whether it was Akainu, Kizaru, or any elite marine, they all stared dumbfoundedly at the giant figure that resembled a small mountain. Being enormous doesn't necessarily mean being powerful. But most of the time, being enormous does represent being powerful. At the same time, Akainu, who had fought alongside Uchiha's group, noticed with seriousness that the energy of that colossal being was even more stable than before. Laser. Kizaru suddenly made a move, shooting a beam of light from his finger that hit Susanoo's shoulder. However, the same attack yielded a completely different result from before. Although the previous Susanoo was also strong, when Kizaru's laser hit it, even if it couldn't penetrate, it would at least break some of the armor and pierce through the flesh. But now, my attack couldn't even break through that armor. Kizaru squinted his eyes, no longer as lazy as before. The only one who can stop me is Senju Hashirama alone. Uchiha Madara, standing on the forehead of the complete Susanoo, said calmly and indifferently, but unfortunately, he's no longer here. But perhaps for you, it's actually a good thing. The deep blue Susanoo slowly drew its sword. Because, in the next second, the sword gleamed. Be careful. Akainu's face changed, his arm turned into lava and transformed into the shape of a dog's head, biting down. Canine fangs of the red lotus. Kizaru also didn't hesitate to make a move. Countless flashes of light bullets rained down. 8-span Qian hook jade. However, under that sword strike, the combined full-force attacks of the 2 admirals were continuously suppressed and pushed back. The surrounding marine soldiers couldn't even get close and were blown away by the shockwaves caused by that swing. Because Uchiha Madara's words were calm. If it were just me, the range of the rewritten map wouldn't be so large. Boom. The 2 admirals could no longer withstand that sword strike. Crack. A loud sound. The red line was split apart by that one sword strike. At the critical moment, the 2 admirals, who had transformed into elemental forms, avoiding death, stared dumbfoundedly at the enormous sword mark. This is Uchiha Madara. In reality, while the 2 admirals were astonished, Zhao Shu had already retreated. He finished showing off and still didn't run? Of course, one reason was the increasingly pleasing scene shown by the system. Host. Zhao Shu. Possessing character template. 1. Uchiha Madara, 64%. Before this battle, when he entered the Celestial Dragon's palace, he was only at 57% progress. Before Akainu arrived, Zhao Shu searched the entire palace's inventory and found 11 devil fruits. This was already quite a lot. It was because of this Henrietta Saint liked to feed the slaves with devil fruits. Otherwise, ordinary celestial dragons wouldn't have collected so many. After absorbing the 11 devil fruits, the total progress only increased from 57% to 61%. A total increase of only 4%, compared to the previous 40% or so, it was almost 10 times less. However, in the following show-off, it unexpectedly increased the authenticity by 3%. Can one show-off be equivalent to 10 devil fruits? Obviously, even though devil fruits were used as shortcuts, playing the role was the best way to improve. No, perhaps it's because this show-off is good. Using Uchiha Madara's own words, the audience is the admirals of the naval headquarters, and there is a group of marine elites below as well, Zhao Shu analyzed. The stage is also a problem. An incident in Mariajoy is definitely the focus of everyone's attention. The news will definitely spread the next day. In reality, it was similar to what Zhao Shu had thought. Even though the transportation between the various islands in the Grand Line remained unchanged, normal newspapers were usually published once a week. But on that day, all the newspapers hesitated and urgently published extra editions. This was a major event. At the same time, marine soldiers were sent out like madmen, frantically searching for people on Saboti archipelago. Marine never gives up, so what if Uchiha Madara displayed powerful strength? Back then, Roger was also pursued by Garp. Uchiha Madara jumped off the cliff and disappeared without a trace. But even if he could walk on water, he definitely couldn't walk to other islands with his feet alone. He needed a ship, and when it came to ships, it naturally meant Saboti archipelago. In an instant, the pirates stranded on Saboti archipelago suffered greatly. Sengoku personally led the team, with the 3 admirals sitting in command, and the Crane and others mobilizing troops to blockade the sea. Not to mention pirates, even some gray forces were mercilessly killed. The 5 elders were going crazy. At this time, all forces chose to cut their losses and seek survival. Whoever dared to show their face would be killed. For a while, more than 80 pirate crews were wiped out on Saboti archipelago, along with over 200 gray teams, and the number of captured criminals reached thousands. Many people who relied on gray forces for a living cursed loudly, and even the local residents were greatly affected. It wasn't until the next day when the news from the newspapers came out that everyone was shocked. Just who is this Uchiha Madara? Extra, extra, Holy Land Mariajoy attacked, red line severed. Newspaper boys shouted loudly as they sold their papers. Have you heard? Holy Land Mariajoy was pierced by an unknown person with a single sword? Oh my, that's really terrifying. No kidding, that day I heard a loud noise coming from Mariajoy. People near Mariajoy, especially those on Saboti archipelago, were all crazily discussing the matter. The newspaper boys could only take a few steps before being stopped by people, and many clapped their hands in delight upon reading about the death of the celestial dragons and the severing of Mariajoy in the newspapers. Mariajoy, being close to Saboti archipelago, was the place where the celestial dragons bullied people the most. Especially for ordinary people, saying, "I hope they die," was not an exaggeration. However, severed the red line? Defeated 2 marine admirals? Everyone's eyes gleamed as they read the newspaper. When this news spread, the world would once again be shaken. New World. A massive ship, resembling a whale, lay quietly on the surface of the sea. The Moby Dick. The fame of this ship was unmatched, even if you looked at the whole world. Because it was the battleship of that man, the world's strongest man, some even rumored that he possessed the power to destroy the world. Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. Dad, have you seen the news today? The 1st Division captain, Marco, walked to the middle of the deck and waved the newspaper in his hand. Something big happened this time. La 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 la. I can imagine, Whitebeard laughed heartily. Is this a special edition? The last time we had such an edition was when Golden Lion caused trouble at the naval headquarters. As he spoke, he chugged down a jug of wine and then snatched the newspaper from Marco's hand. The next second, his eyes imperceptibly narrowed. La 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 la. Young people these days are truly remarkable. Whitebeard suddenly threw the wine jug aside, his eyes shining. Yes, his bounty has just been announced. Marco shook his head. Marco, are you also interested in him? Whitebeard shook his head, picked up the wanted poster from the newspaper, and shook it, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Making such a name for himself on his first appearance, the celestial dragons must be driving that old man crazy with his achievements. Boisterous laughter echoed across the sea as Whitebeard looked up at the sky. A person who dares to kill celestial dragons. If possible, I really want to meet that guy named Uchiha Madara. A small island in the New World. On the island, poisonous insects were everywhere, and all water sources were toxic springs. The weather is scorching hot, and the toxic fumes rise from the poisonous spring. Even the birds in the sky cannot escape the disaster. But this island, known as the Land of Death, has welcomed a special guest. The toxins in the air cannot even slow him down for a second. The ferocious poison is afraid to approach him. The beast, Kaido, known as the strongest creature in the world on land, sea, and air, his extraordinary destructive power and immortality have led some to say, Kaido is probably the strongest in a one-on-one fight. What a boring world. He lies quietly in the poisonous spring, as if lying in a hot spring. After a moment of silence, he picks up a newspaper from the shore. This world has finally produced some interesting guys. I wonder if you can kill me? Uchiha Madara. As he speaks, he casually lets go of the newspaper, which falls into the spring and instantly emits a corrosive sound. In just a few seconds, it completely disappears from this world. Similar situations have occurred in various places. Doflamingo looks at the news and lets out a classic, ha ha ha, laugh. Interesting, they actually took down the celestial dragons. Hawkeye looks at the news and instinctively touches his sword. That giant who transformed into Uchiha Madara seems to use a sword too. Dragon picks up the news, says nothing, and falls into contemplation. But whether it's indifference, excitement, or some other purpose, the attention of the entire world is focused on that man's figure. At the same time, along with the news, a bounty is issued. Avenger Uchiha Madara, bounty, 1.5 billion berries. Note: if there is any information about the Avenger, report it to the Marines and receive a reward of 100 million berries. If there is any information about his brother, a reward of 50 million berries will also be given. The origin of this title seems to be because Zhao Shu killed the celestial dragons and wrote a message to convey it to the Empress. He casually carved the words, "Vengeance, I have taken it," with his shuriken. Although the lines are arrogant, the underlying meaning is, Empress, should I get a raise? But it seems that Uchiha Madara is misunderstood to have a grudge against the celestial dragons. Oh well, let it be. For example, Uchiha Madara has 5 brothers, and except for his brother Zhao Shu, the others were killed by the atrocities of the celestial dragons. Thanks to the Marines for adding drama to my aliasa by Zhao Shu. The whole world was shocked by Uchiha Madara's audacity. What was Zhao Shu doing? He calmly walked into a bar. Shaki's rip-off bar, an empty tavern with a peaceful atmosphere. Shaki was wiping the counter. She used to be a pirate, but she retired 30 years ago. She was once pursued by Vice Admiral Garp, Luffy's grandfather, and was quite well known. Of course, she is now anonymous. She opened a bar on Saboti Archipelago and also worked as an information broker. Ding dong. Welcome. Shaki's pupils contracted when she saw the visitor's face, but quickly returned to calmness. What would you like to drink? Yes. Uchiha Madara thought for a moment and said, Bloody Mary. All right. Shaki smiled. The ingredients for a Bloody Mary include 50 milliliters of vodka, 10 milliliters of lemon juice, freshly ground pepper, salt, 2 dashes of Tabasco sauce, 4 dashes of Worcestershire sauce, and 120 milliliters of tomato juice. The specific method of making the cocktail is to take a tall glass, add some ice cubes, pour in all the ingredients except for the tomato juice, stir appropriately, then pour in the tomato juice until the glass is full, stir again, and finally garnish with a celery stalk or a whole shrimp. This is one of the most well-known cocktails, and as the owner of a bar, Shaki is quite familiar with it. However, for some reason, her movements in making the drink seemed slower this time. Before she could finish making the drink, a slightly imposing voice appeared at the door. What a rare guest. A steady footstep sounded, and a man with silver hair, wearing glasses, and a straight scar across his right eye walked in. Pluton, really? Uchiha Madara calmly said, as the vice captain of the Pirate King, is it really a good idea for you to come out at a time like this in the marine-controlled Saboti Archipelago? It's still better than you, who killed celestial dragons, wandering around everywhere, isn't it? Pluton laughed heartily, sitting down next to Uchiha Madara, and said, This drink, I'll treat you. Thank you. Uchiha Madara calmly said, I happened to come here in a hurry and didn't bring any money. Who gave you the confidence to come and order a drink without money? Shaki was taken aback, then smiled bitterly and shook her head, but her speed in making the drink suddenly increased. However, Rayleigh, upon hearing this, burst into laughter. Interesting, interesting. A person who can take down celestial dragons is indeed much more interesting than ordinary people. He laughed heartily, his laughter carrying a wildness. Obviously, even after not being a pirate for many years, this vice captain of the Pirate King still carried the spirit of a pirate. After laughing, Rayleigh squinted his eyes and looked at Uchiha Madara. So, what are you here for? I didn't come here with any specific purpose, I just felt like I couldn't pass by Saboti Archipelago without seeing Pluton. Uchiha Madara calmly said. Oh? Rayleigh squinted his eyes but didn't say anything. He didn't even know his own whereabouts, let alone how this person knew. But, are you planning to leave the island? Rayleigh smiled and said, Well, I don't like celestial dragons either, I can help you with this favor. But you've got the wrong person. Even if it's me, I have to hide at a time like this. Sengoku has truly gone mad, and I don't want to be caught up in his mess. Uchiha Madara's expression remained calm. I told you, I just came to see Pluton. Rayleigh glanced at him, furrowing his brow. Saboti Archipelago is already under marine blockade. Not to mention someone like you, even ordinary pirates or grey organizations that aren't considered criminals wouldn't dare to act recklessly. What do you mean, wouldn't dare to act recklessly? They're like dogs without a home. Shaki, annoyed, brought the freshly poured drink over to Uchiha Madara. Forget about them, my bar gets inspected a dozen times a day. Kid, how are you going to compensate me? Clearly, Pluton Rayleigh was back, too. But in the next second, Shaki and Rayleigh both changed their expressions. The Marines are here, follow me. Rayleigh stood up directly, his face serious. With observation haki, he had already sensed the presence of the soldiers. Although Pluton Rayleigh had aged significantly and looked very different from his younger self, the Marine soldiers might not recognize him. But the Avenger Uchiha Madara, who had just committed a major crime, was not among them. Fortunately, Shaki herself was an old pirate and naturally had a sense of danger, preparing several hiding places. Rayleigh took a few quick steps, intending to lead Uchiha Madara away. However, when he turned his head, Uchiha Madara was still sitting calmly in his chair, quietly sipping his drink. Why are you still drinking? I'll make 10 more for you later, Shaki urged anxiously. If we don't leave now, it'll be too late. Although they were not weak, they didn't want to give up the safe place they had prepared because of this unwarranted trouble. Don't worry, I'm fine, Uchiha Madara said calmly. What do you mean you're fine? Shaki was going crazy. Fine? Of course, they were fine. Even Shaki, the weakest one present, could take care of that team of Marines. But what was the use? Sengoku and the 3 admirals were not far away. All for the sake of saving face and not moving from their spot? Don't worry, I told you, I'm fine, Uchiha Madara said calmly. Shaki was getting frustrated, but the Marine soldiers were gradually closing in. It was too late. Clang. The door of the bar was pushed open. Teams of elite Marines rushed in. Have you seen any suspicious individuals here? The Marine officer shouted sternly. Rayleigh widened his eyes, and Shaki looked shocked. Suspicious individuals? Yes, there was one. Right in front of them, the person quietly drinking his alcohol. But all the Marines, including the leading Marine Rear Admiral, completely ignored the person sitting there peacefully. Rayleigh and Shaki both had shocked expressions on their faces. Are you all blind to such a big person? Of course, they also knew that this was absolutely impossible. This time, the world government exerted pressure at every level. The Marines were driven crazy by them. Even the surveillance ship from the 4 Emperors' side was ignored. The 3 admirals, plus Fleet Admiral Sengoku, all came over. It is even said that the supreme commander behind the military achievements, Kuang, has come to sit in the naval headquarters. If anything happens, he will immediately come to support. Didn't you see that the grey industries in Saboti Archipelago were abandoned by the people above? They dare not provoke the crazy high-level officials at this time. Once there is a problem, as long as the Marines say, it's all because of a certain force causing trouble, otherwise we would have caught Uchiha Madara, they can bring down any noble except for the celestial dragons. Soldiers who can be excluded from the search at this time are definitely the elites among the elites of the Marines. Just by looking at the leader, you can tell. A vice admiral placed in the 4 seas is enough to guard a prosperous town or lead a group of warships to chase pirates. But here, he can only lead a small search team of dozens of people. How elite must he be? Uchiha Madara quietly sipped his wine, with a hint of crimson in his eyes. But everyone ignored the figure sipping wine. Genjutsu. The genjutsu of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is definitely not something these small soldiers can break. In the Hokage world, even the Raikage would be instantly hit, let alone this group of people? Unless an admiral is brought in as the leader of the search, it is possible to break his genjutsu, otherwise. Hehe. So that's how it is, this is your confidence. No wonder Sengoku has been searching for 4 days, and various auction houses have been raided, but they can't find your trace at all. Rayleigh took a deep breath and concealed his surprise in his eyes. Then immediately, it turned into a smile again. He had already retired and didn't care about pirates anymore. He spent his days drinking and even auctioned himself off when he was broke. Now his biggest interest is watching the new generation cause trouble for the Marines. Just imagine the scene where his old opponent is repeatedly forced by the celestial dragons, and Rayleigh can't help but smile. Shaki also widened her eyes. This man who appeared like a comet was unexpectedly so strong. The Marines were at a loss, But the leading vice admiral looked at Rayleigh and Shaki's expressions and felt that there might be a problem, so he immediately ordered the soldiers to search. Of course, Shaki was cunning and had long been prepared. She wasn't found in the search. At most, there were some minor issues, and she just had to pay a fine. In the end, the vice admiral waved his hand and led the team to withdraw. They still had a lot of work to do. Today, they still had to search Sabodi Archipelago 3 times. Now, I believe that you just came to see me. Rayleigh sat back in his seat and handed him a glass of wine. That's what I said from the beginning, Uchiha Madara said calmly. Sorry, now I truly believe it. What are you going to do after seeing me? Set sail. Rayleigh narrowed his eyes. It's not a good time to set sail now. The Marines are patrolling outside every day. Unless the 4 Emperors' fleet suddenly appears, there is no way to escape. I have my ways, Uchiha Madara said calmly. Oh? Rayleigh's eyes flashed with curiosity. Can I go and take a look? Feel free. 30 minutes later. Rayleigh looked at the coast, dumbfounded, as he watched the Sea Kings in front of him. Those Sea Kings had blood-red Sharingan in their eyes. They looked fierce on the outside but obediently lowered their heads, allowing Uchiha Madara to walk into their mouths before diving into the sea. Rayleigh stood there in a daze for a long time before sighing. The newcomers these days are really terrifying. At the same time, on the 9 Snake Pirates ship, although the news had already spread worldwide, there were no newsbirds in the calm belt where the 9 Snake Pirates were located. But today, they set sail again and obtained some news from the defeated pirate ship. Hancock looked at the news and the accompanying bounty poster in a daze. Did he really do it? Celestial dragons, they were actually killed? In fact, when Hancock hired Zhao Shu, she didn't expect him to succeed. She was just testing the waters, and she didn't care about that devil fruit anyway. But the result? Vengeance, I have already taken it. These words engraved in the Celestial Dragon's palace. The Marines don't know what's going on. Does Hancock not know either? He said this to her. The price paid is a bounty of up to 1.5 billion in the ongoing blockade of Sabodi Archipelago. Sandersonia and Marigold beside her also fell into silence. For a moment, the room was quiet. After they reacted, they looked at each other, tears filling their eyes. Tears fell and landed on the ground, making a muffled sound. Finally, the 3 of them embraced each other. Sister. The 2 sisters were in tears. Hancock herself shed tears. We don't have to worry anymore, and we have to thank our benefactor. During this time, Zhao Shu's clone had been obediently staying in the room assigned to him in the cabin. There was no other way. The clone was just a clone, and all his actions required the consumption of chakra. Although Uchiha Madara had a lot of chakra, even when he hadn't reached his peak, his chakra far surpassed that of ordinary ninjas. But after such a long time, Zhao Shu's clone also needed some stability and shouldn't move around randomly. So the group of tomboyish women from the 9 snakes could only helplessly look at the sign that said, "Sleeping, please do not disturb," and sigh. Really, why are men so good at sleeping? Men are always sleeping, how do they work? That's right, you've all touched men, but I haven't. The women of Ona Island chattered at Zhao Shu's door, while diligently recording in their notebooks. Men are creatures that are very good at sleeping. Inside, Zhao Shu's clone, I don't want to sleep either. Can't you all stop coming to bother me whenever you have time? Especially those tomboyish women who can run like horses with their arms. You almost made me disappear with your pinching. Suddenly, Zhao Shu's clone looked up. The women surrounding Zhao Shu's door heard footsteps behind them, and their expressions changed. Lady Hancock. What are you all doing here? Hancock said with a stern face. The crowd hesitated and looked at each other. Although they didn't know why this man was invited on board by Empress Hancock, the tradition of the 9 snakes made them a little uneasy. Finally, one person plucked up the courage and said, "We are curious about men." Enough, go do what you need to do, Hancock said coldly. Yes. The women were scared and dispersed. Hancock, with a stern face, knocked on Zhao Shu's door and walked in with her sisters. Then, Shua. The 3 of them didn't hesitate and bent down at the same time. Thank you, Hancock, with a proud personality and a bad temper, but now. She lowered her proud head. Zhao Shu's clone was taken aback, then smiled. It's just work, nothing serious. It's different. Hancock shook her head. Just a few devil fruits, who would kill celestial dragons for such a thing? I would, Zhao Shu thought to himself. It's not just about the fruits, it's also about showing off. The reward obtained is far less than the cost paid. Hancock whispered, you may not know, but your brother has already been given a bounty, 1.5 billion berries. Zhao Shu. The main body is playing big. Now, as long as I give the Marines some information about your brother, I can get 100 million berries, while your information is worth 5,000 berries. Zhao Shu. Well, so what? Let's learn the transformation technique. This time, it's for me. Hancock's face turned slightly red, and she tried to turn her head away. Anyway, the Kuja pirates will not betray their friends. If you need devil fruits, I still have some. Some devil fruits have strong abilities, while others are weak. As a country, the Kuja pirates naturally have reservations about two individuals who are not well known. In Hancock's treasury, there are still a few devil fruits that the Kuja pirates have collected. These treasures are already at a strategic level and were not revealed before. Although they are not as valuable as the flame fruit, they can easily be sold for several hundred million at an auction. Is that so? Then thank you. Zhao Shu's clone looked at the news with a smile. Truly worthy of the main body, leaving a message specifically at the Celestial Dragon's palace. Well done. Saying that, Hancock handed over a plate with 3 devil fruits on it. Although Zhao Shu hadn't seen the devil fruit catalog, he knew that these treasures kept by the Kuja pirates were definitely not inferior goods. What? What are you going to do next? Hancock hesitated and asked. Just take me to an island, I have a special way to contact my brother, Zhao Shu's clone said. Then, all right, Hancock hesitated for a moment and nodded. It was not difficult to send Zhao Shu to an island. Besides continuing to rob for the necessary supplies for the Kuja island, Hancock's purpose for this trip was to contact the world government and accept the title of Shicibukai. The world government, which was now in a sorry state due to the killing of the celestial dragons, needed strong individuals like Hancock to join them, and they could even make greater demands than before. So sending Zhao Shu to an island in the East Blue was nothing. It was a good opportunity to contact the Marines in the West Blue. After parting ways with Hancock, the clone held the 3 devil fruits in his hand and muttered, I hope there's no expiration or deterioration for devil fruits. Then he buried them in the ground on the island and covered them with earth style, submerging them. Fortunately, it was winter now, the weather was cold, and it was even snowing. The clone also wrapped the devil fruits in a hard earth style, so there shouldn't be any accidents. After that, with a bang, the clone disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the main body, who was still on the Sea Kings, trembled and received the memories of the clone during this time. Have the devil fruits been buried? Zhao Shu pondered for a moment, then stopped thinking about that question. Compared to the devil fruits, there was something more important that he needed to look at. Congratulations, host, for unlocking the second character template. In reality, Zhao Shu took the opportunity to see Rayleigh under the identity of Uchiha Madara mainly to show off. However, it seems that the effect is mediocre, as the authenticity only increased by 1%. Due to the system interface not displaying decimal places, Zhao Shu even suspects that this show-off only increased by a fraction of a percent. But it's better than nothing. It's not easy to find a good show-off opportunity like assassinating celestial dragons. It's estimated that there must be a deputy of the Pirate King acting as an audience to earn that 1% income. After all, he didn't make a big performance this time, nor did he use Uchiha Madara's lines from the original work. But there's actually a second character template. Zhao Shu squinted his eyes and glanced at his system. The authenticity of the first template, Uchiha Madara, is now 65%, not a whole number, nor a particularly meaningful number. So why did a second character template appear? Is it because Uchiha Madara has gained a certain level of fame worldwide? Is it because the authenticity has reached a certain level? Or is it just a coincidence, with the system randomly generating a new character template? Zhao Shu needs to have a clear understanding of all this. After all, there will always be some characters that are difficult to portray or have no practical use, or they may be difficult for him as the actor to accept. Like cross-dressing, and more cross-dressing. But the second template is actually him? Zhao Shu looked at that name, his eyes narrowed. This is an invincible character. This character is full of distinctive traits and unique personality. In a certain sense, he is even more unique than the show-off class. But to portray this character, it seems, a good stage is also needed. Zhao Shu squinted his eyes and glanced at the nearby small island. This will do. Daz Island is an ordinary island with a normal climate. Apart from its decent food production, there is nothing particularly unique about it. There are not 10,000, but 8,000 such small islands in East Blue. If there is one thing that sets it apart, it would be the Marine recruit training base on this island. And now, this training camp has been targeted by pirates. Kill, kill, kill. The ferocious pirates, with grim smiles on their faces, brandished their swords and charged forward. Under the leadership of the instructors, the Marine recruits resisted step by step, protecting the villagers behind them. However, they were at a disadvantage. Marine recruits were continuously seized by the ruthless pirates, who took the opportunity to kill them, reducing their numbers. Damn it! The lieutenant colonel of the Marine recruit training base gritted his teeth as he dealt with the enemy's attacks, his face looking grim. Seeing the recruits he had painstakingly trained being killed one by one, how could he, as their teacher, not feel heartbroken? But there was nothing he could do. The pirates who launched this attack were the Sword Demon with a bounty of 110 million. A powerhouse of this level is simply beyond what he, a lieutenant colonel, can withstand. In fact, if it weren't for the presence of many Marines in the training camp, it would have turned into a massacre long ago. This is East Blue, the weakest sea area. Ha ha ha, I knew you would react like this. Sword Demon laughed heartily. With those villagers, let's see how you can escape. How could a Marine training base withstand billions of pirates? But they still attacked the village, forcing the training base to abandon its defense and go out for field operations. You despicable pirates! A slightly thin female recruit couldn't help but curse angrily. Toshigi, shut up. Focus on the battle, the lieutenant colonel shouted, his face grim. Pirates, do they care about what is despicable or not? HMPH, don't blame us for targeting you recruits. Who made that damn Zephyr guy always chase after us? Sword Demon revealed a sinister expression. If we kill all the recruits you've trained, that immortal old man will probably feel heartbroken, right? The Sword Demon pirates had been pursued by Zephyr for a long time, and even the vice captain was taken out by Zephyr. If it weren't for encountering a storm along the way, the entire pirate crew would probably have been wiped out. They didn't dare to retaliate against Zephyr, nor did they have the power to retaliate against Zephyr. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't dare to retaliate against others. Damn it! Toshiji's anger grew, but she was only 12 or 13 years old now, not even considered a Marine, just a recruit who had just started training. In her extreme anger, she swung her sword and attacked. Unfortunately, the Sword Demon sneered, and with a turn of his famous sword Shigure, he cut Toshiji's sword in half. The lieutenant colonel tried to intervene, but the Sword Demon seized the opportunity and instead struck him with a sword in the abdomen, instantly losing his combat power. Damn it! Toshigi gritted her teeth, looking at the sword in the Sword Demon's hand, a sense of frustration rising in her heart. Such a famous sword, held by someone as wicked as the Sword Demon. What a humiliation! She was someone who loved swords, and what she couldn't stand the most was famous swords being held by pirates and bandits. Unfortunately, in reality, even the swords in the hands of the Marines were not as numerous as those in the hands of pirates. Of course, Toshigi didn't need to care about these things now. Because the Sword Demon had already raised his sword Shigure, ready to completely kill this ignorant Marine recruit. The sword gleamed, and Toshigi couldn't help but close her eyes. But the expected pain did not come. Opening her eyes, she saw a person standing in front of her. It was an ordinary-looking person, wearing a strange yellow bodysuit, red gloves and boots, and a white cape. His face was blank, slightly droopy, and looked very silly. The only thing that stood out was his head. Completely bald, whether he shaved it himself or was naturally bald, she didn't know. But, you're not a Marine, you're a civilian. Sword Demon squinted his eyes. Who are you? He didn't even notice when this bald person appeared. The bald person was taken aback for a moment, then he heard him speak in a calm and strange tone. I'm Saitama, a hero driven by interest. Saitama, no need for further introduction, is the new character played by Zhao Shu. Taken from One Punch Man, and he is the protagonist in it. He is the true, absolute, and forever invincible existence in the world of One Punch. The superhero who can defeat all enemies with just one punch, that is One Punch Man, or perhaps I should say, Saitama. Of course, this power does not come without side effects. Saitama has gained absolute strength, but as a price, he has lost a lot, his hair, and his emotions. In fact, Zhao Shu had already noticed the battles here, but even with Uchiha Madara's transformation technique, he could easily obtain the realism of Saitama 27 from the beginning. It took him a long time to rush over. Not because he wanted to wait for a crucial moment to save the day or show off, but why is it so difficult to portray this bald guy's dumb expression? Zhao Shu cursed in his heart. I thought playing Saitama would be easy, with basically just one expression, but this expression is really troublesome. Uchiha Madara is fine. Whether it's arrogance, anger, or calmness. He still falls under the category of normal human expressions. It's possible to simulate a good mindset, and even if it's a bit off, it won't be too far off. But Saitama. That silly and cute expression, he practiced in front of a mirror he found for a long time before barely grasping it. Even now, he still needs to constantly restrain his expression from changing, as if he were a superhero who truly doesn't care about anything in the world, standing in front of the sword demon. But unfortunately, the guy asked him, so naturally, he answered. I'm Saitama, a hero driven by interest. A calm voice, with a strange and relaxed tone. A hero? Ha ha ha. So there are still heroes. Whether it's the sword demon or the pirates around, they all burst into laughter. Heroes? How ordinary and vulgar. There are actually people who call themselves heroes. Even the Marines had a slightly strange expression. The Marines also have heroes, like Garp. But what kind of ghost is this hero driven by interest? However, Saitama just looked around, then glanced at the Marines lying in a pool of blood. This. Apologizing won't solve the problem anymore. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. The sword demon widened his eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he heard. Apologize? Then, ha ha ha. All the pirates laughed wildly, including the sword demon himself. He turned to his subordinates and said, Did you hear what he said? It's an apology. The laughter of the subordinates became even more unbridled. The sword demon himself laughed the loudest. The next second, his expression suddenly changed. The maniacal laughter instantly turned incredibly ferocious. Ubalda, before he could finish his words, Saitama punched him and sent him flying into the sky. The expressions of the people around seemed to freeze. The pirates' laughter seemed to be paused. The battlefield became extremely quiet, to the point where you could hear a pin drop. 3 minutes later, the sword demon's body finally fell, crashing to the ground and turning into a pile of flesh. At this moment, the pirates' faces changed drastically. A pirate with a bounty of over 1 billion was easily killed with just one punch? Ah! The pirates were terrified, screaming in fear as they scrambled to escape. The Marines were also stunned, staring blankly at Saitama, who still had an expressionless face as if he hadn't done anything, with a silly and cute expression. One punch, and a pirate with a bounty of over 1 billion was dealt with? Saitama lowered his head and looked at the pit created by the sword demon's body. I hope I don't have to compensate for this. If it's really necessary, I can dig some soil nearby and fill it up, right? At this time, the Marine captain finally reacted and quickly led the Marines to pursue the pirates. If they didn't chase now, the pirates would escape on their ship. Toshigi, on the other hand, stood there dumbfounded, with the sword demon's Ryukotsujin right in front of her. Saitama yawned and turned to leave. Wait, are you leaving? Toshigi finally reacted at this moment. Saitama nodded. If I don't leave, will you Marines feed me? Toshigi was stunned for a moment, then lowered her head. This, Ryukotsujin is your spoils of war, Yua. I don't want it. I don't need it. If you like it, you can keep it. Saitama waved his hand and left directly. Wait. Toshigi subconsciously called out to Saitama. The hero you mentioned earlier. Saitama thought for a moment and said, in this world, there are countless villains, and those who dare to stand up and confront them are heroes. Then, he waved his hand and left, leaving behind a little girl holding a sword, watching his figure as he walked away.